detail, however small, would be overlooked. This method continues to serve me well in comparing old information to newer leads. The next major undertaking was gathering intelligence from current and retired law enforcement sources of good repute, those familiar with the case and those experienced in the worlds of local and international art crime. Equally necessary was interviewing knowledgeable members of the criminal underworld, as well as their families, friends, and associates. I also sought out the journalists who have made a study of the case, among them my co-author, Tom Mashberg. Another pivotal step in my investigation of this 20-year puzzle was researching how art criminals operate, their method, or MO. Combining the intelligence I gathered and the reams of information available online and in the memories of old art experts, I examined crimes that bore even the slightest resemblance to the Gardner case. I searched through decades of newspaper records, using the Boston Public Library as well as the archives at major local and national newspapers. I had many burning questions. For instance, because the Gardner thieves had dressed as police officers to trick a security guard into granting them entry, I wanted to know what other crimes were committed in Boston by men disguised in police uniforms or in any uniforms. I also wanted to study robbery methods that were completely different from the Gardner robbery. This would let me rule out certain criminals and keep a tighter focus. One of the more intriguing characteristics of the Gardner heist is that two of the stolen paintings, The Storm on the Sea of Galilee, 1633, and A Lady and Gentleman in Black, 1633, both by Rembrandt, were cut from their frames. When an artist paints, the canvas is held taut by a stretcher, and that stretcher is then packed inside the frame. In this theft, both the stretchers and frames were left lying on the museum floor. Why had the thieves done this? Was it because the frames and stretchers, all combined, were too heavy to carry out? Possibly, but there were two thieves on hand, both described by the guards as young and healthy, and they spent a leisurely 81 minutes in the museum. They had all the time they needed to carry away the paintings, rather than commit what can be described only as a witless act of desecration, slicing two Rembrandt canvases from their stretchers. Why risk irreparable damage? Were they so unschooled as to imagine they could manhandle the canvases without wreaking destruction on the paintings? That alone is a key insight into the culprits. Thieves schooled in art would have done no such thing. Moreover, the robbers anticipated that they were going to cut some paintings from their frames. Why else would they have brought along an instrument that was sharp and sturdy enough to slice through stiff, varnished paint and linen canvas? Two other major art thefts in Massachusetts, both involving Rembrandts, as the following chapters will explain, were pulled off more than 15 years before the Gardner crime, without anyone resorting to cutting canvases. Why do so now? Had these thieves learned their lessons in theft outside Massachusetts? Was this their first art crime? To answer these questions, I needed to examine art thefts spanning the globe and learn how common it was for paintings to be cut or removed from their frames, both before and since 1990. That examination led me to obscure art thefts committed in a similar fashion. I set out to learn whether this act was some form of signature, a telltale or forensic clue much like those left behind by repeat killers. This kind of analysis is akin to the initial investigation conducted by a homicide detective. Aside from the obvious questions, for example, victim's identity, manner, and time of death, the detective has to consider the whole scene to get a jump on the identity of the perpetrator. When a murder victim is found still wearing an expensive watch or carrying a wallet full of money, robbery seems an unlikely motive. Similarly, items not stolen during a museum heist tell an investigator important things about the thieves. In the great majority of thefts, it has quickly become clear the thieves were not art experts and had no shopping lists. This is because they often